Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Zaid Al-Qaisi, Quadra 2, Skills Development Expert.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zaid Al-Qaisi. I'm working as a skills development expert to Quadra 2, Resilience for Refugees, IDPs, returnees, and host communities in response to the protracted Syrian and Iraqi crisis. Dear ladies and gentlemen, a translation is available from English to Arabic and vice versa. To get the translation into the language you want, please click on the interpretation button. Dear ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Quadra 2, developing skills for employability of Syrian refugees and vulnerable youth in Jordan, I would like to welcome you all to the Preparatory Work-Based Learning for Skills Development webinars, which aims to increase knowledge of participant stakeholders in relation to work-based learning concept, implementation mechanisms, and international challenges and best practices, identification of work-based learning potential approaches and methodologies, specifically for semi-skilled worker level, setting the foundation for pool of representative stakeholders to draft new work-based learning model and implementation plan. I also would like to inform you that the Preparatory Work-Based Learning series of webinars includes 4 webinars, starting from today, 30th September, and I have the pleasure to invite you to join the upcoming webinars, which will take place on the 15th, 17th, 20th of September. Thank you very much again for being with us today. Now, I would like to provide a brief about today's webinar. We have 3 presentations. The first presentation will provide orientation to Quadra 2 project and will be presented by the intervention manager, Ms. Iman Hadwa. The second presentation will focus on work-based learning, definitions and major types, and will be presented by Mr. Didier. Mr. Didier Gilbert is a specialist in private sector engagement in VET, and he is working to the European Training Foundation, ETF, as a country coordinator in Armenia. And the third presentation will discuss the policies issues related to work-based learning and will be presented by Dr. Burhan Shakroun. Dr. Shakroun is currently working as a head of division to UNESCO HQ Paris. Dear participants, we also allocated 30 minutes for Q&A after finishing the 3 sessions. You can type your question in the chat bar and send it to me, and I will direct the question to the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for the first presentation with Ms. Iman Hadwa, the intervention manager. Ms. Iman, please, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Iman Hadwa, Quadra 2, intervention manager.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to attend this webinar. Partners and stakeholders, we're very happy to and pleased to have you with us today. So before we start with our 4 webinars, we would like to walk you through Quadra 2, the program, and then put a focus on the component where WBL falls under, which is the developing skills for employability component. So welcome again. I'd be happy to go through the presentation now and receive your questions at the end when our colleague Zaid will allow us. So just again, to put this into perspective, the WBL workshops are taking place under Quadra 2 program. Quadra 2 program is the Resilience for Refugees, IDPs, returnees, and host communities in response to the protracted Syrian and Iraqi crisis. Under that, we have a component called Developing Skills for Employability of Vulnerable Youth and Syrian Refugees in Jordan, which focuses on skills development. So, just 1 second. So what is Qudra 2? Some of you, I'm sure, have heard of Qudra 1. Qudra 1 was implemented in different countries, and in Jordan was implemented between 2016 and 2019. So Qudra 2 is a continuation to that program. It's a multi-donor, multi-country program that is now being implemented between September 2019 and August 2022. So this is basically, we're about to start the second year. It's co-financed by the European Union Regional Trust Fund, by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and the Spanish agency. And it is implemented in 4 countries, in Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq, and Jordan. So those are some pictures from Qudra 1, as Qudra 2 is still starting in its preparatory stage. But this is also like to demonstrate what we'll be working on in terms of skills development and TVET. So just a brief look at what Qudra components have, and then we'll go into the focus on our program. So Qudra 2 components, Qudra has 3 major components basically. The first one is education and protection. The second one is employment promotion and income generation, and this is where our work falls under. The third component is support to the local governmental institutions and civil society organizations. And we have a very important cross-cutting theme, which is social cohesion. And this is especially important for such a program that includes refugees. For further information, please log on to Qudra program website. There's a lot of information there. And of course, we have a country director for Jordan and Lebanon, and an office for GIZ, who's responsible for the program in Jordan and in Lebanon. So once again, Qudra has 3 main specific objectives. Number 1 is education and protection, 2 is employment promotion and income generation, and 3 is the local government institutions and CSOs. And the work-based learning workshops fall basically under SO2 and specifically under skills development in collaboration with private sector, which will be implemented by Enable under a grant from GIZ and under Qudra 2 program. So this is where this program falls under. And we can see, you know, with the context that we are passing through with the COVID-19, how challenging this component is, but how important it is for all of us for, you know, trying to mitigate the consequences that we have. So Qudra 2, the development component, the developing skills for employability component, basically focuses on employment promotion to increase the number of youth and adults who acquire demand-driven vocational and technical skills. So we're focusing really on technical skills that the market is requiring. And we're taking into consideration, once again, the changes that COVID-19 created. So as part of providing skills development, Syrian refugees and vulnerable Jordanian youth will be enrolled in VET, work-based learning initiatives at the semi-skilled level under strategic objective 2, output 2.2 specifically. And of course, other components will complement this work through the work of GIZ on the bigger component. So just a brief look at the approach. So we always try to improve our approach every time we implement something. And what we're trying to do here is to provide quality semi-skilled trainings with, maybe we're ambitious, maybe we're not, but we know of different programs that have WBL, but we are looking at 50% work-based learning percentage. And we will be looking at different scenarios and cases from different countries. And we'll see also some cases where work-based learning is provided at a 100% level. So in addition to the quality skills, skilled trainings, we also, we all believe as stakeholders and partners that private sector should be involved throughout the process, from the design phase, even from the phase of identification of needs and then design of trainings, as well as implementation, to potentially employing also the graduates of the program. And the third part is the transversal skills. So we know that we live in an era where these transversal skills are very important: positive thinking, attitudes towards work, teamwork with colleagues, etc., in addition to entrepreneurial skills. So if we put these three components together, we hope that together with you working with our partners, we'll achieve employment generation and income generation. So the beneficiaries under this specific component, the one I mentioned, which is the output 2.2, is vulnerable Jordanian youth and Syrian refugees of ages 17 to 30 years old. Of course, just like others, other organizations working in development, we hope to achieve female participation, and we hope to achieve 40% participation of females. Although we all know how difficult and challenging it is for females to go into the TVET sector, especially in Jordan. And we aim to target five governorates: Mafraq, Irbid, Amman, Zarqa, and Ma'an, and of course work also inside Zatari and Azraq camps. So just briefly looking at the results of our project, this specific component once again. So result one really focuses on public-private partnerships, and this is why we feel that it's very important to bring all of these partners together. And this is why we hope that today we meant to have participation from the private sector, and we really look forward to hearing your voice throughout the presentations and throughout the questions. Result two is the training of the youth. So we aim to arrive at a number of 2,000 youth trained through this program, and once again through work-based learning. And this is why this is happening. This workshop is happening. And finally, the result three looks at private enterprises enhancement of capacities on different levels. Finally, what have we done so far in this preparatory phase? We still feel that we are in a preparatory phase. And so far what we've done is we have completed one of the studies on the skills needs analysis and mapping of private enterprises with employment and PPP potential. It will be uploaded on our website soon, so please do have a look at it, and it's free to benefit any stakeholder. We've also launched our call for proposal last week and invited interest applicants and training service providers in vocational training to apply for this opportunity to be partners with us for the implementation of trainings. We're also currently, through this workshop, joining interested stakeholders to develop a work-based learning model that could benefit this program, but not only this program, but could also benefit Jordan in the future as one of the models that has been tested and can be adopted for the long run. And to add to this, we've also initiated communication with major partners in TVET promotion and the TVET training service provision, which is the VTC and NET, and we hope to be able to work with them very soon to provide these trainings. Thank you so much for listening in. I wish that this is a fruitful participation and fruitful workshop. We were hoping to have this in a physical setting where we can all see each other. I'm just right now talking to a screen myself. So we were all hoping to have this in a physical setting, but hopefully webinars will do the same and will arrive to the same results. I'd like to remind also, and my colleague Zaid will remind as well, that we will be working physically with working groups of 20 people or less, representing your organizations. So please start thinking of who you'd like to nominate to be part of these working groups, to have a participatory approach in coming up with a model that you have maybe tested or that you can be part of testing in the future. We're available here, and our colleagues in GIZ are also available, so please don't hesitate to communicate with us for any questions or potential partnerships. Thank you very much for attending once again, and I hope that you will stay with us for webinar 2, 3, and 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman, for your presentation. Now we will move to the technical sessions, session 2 with Mr. Didier Gilbert about the definitions and major types of work-based learning. Let me please introduce Mr. Didier for you. Mr. Didier holds master degree in economic and administration from Paris University with a certificate of training and business advisor for craft companies and an international experience in France, Peru, Canada, and Jordan. In 2015, Didier joined ETF as a specialist of private sector engagement in VET, then moved to become the country coordinator for Armenia. In 2019, Didier has 19 years of work experience in the automobile services sector in France. Didier held the position of advisor in management and accountancy, European project leader, and international department manager. Didier was the representative of the French Employer Association in the training group of the European Committee of Motor Trade and Repair. With strong experience in enterprise strategies, he has developed the international cooperation strategy for the automobile services sector. Mr. Didier, thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Didier Gelibert, specialist in private sector engagement in VET, country coordinator, Armenia.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me because I've got some issues in my screen. Okay, great. My name is Didier Gelibert and I'm working for the European Training Foundation. And I would like first to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to participate to this great event. I would like also to present the ETF. The ETF, it is an EU agency for supporting countries to develop through learnings. In fact, ETF is supporting its partners country in the field of human capital development. The partner country you can see here. Our activity covers 4 main areas. That first, it is improving skills, promoting employability, making system work for everyone, and working to a global development, global Europe, sorry. I would like to start first by giving a definition. I like also to use a definition that it is has been set by the Interagency Group on Tibet. This interagency comprises UNESCO, ILO, OECD, CDFOP, ETF. And it's stated that the work-based learning refers to all forms of learning that take place in a real work environment. And it provides individuals with skills needed to successfully obtain and keep jobs and progress in their professional development. So work-based learning, and I've highlighted 4 elements. So work-based learning is learning by doing real work. That's making production of real goods and services. Real environment, it means that inside the companies or inside an organization, it could be paid or unpaid. And it could be combined with a school-based learning, meaning classroom or workshop. Here, I want to focus about the real work environment. What it is important is the fact that someone is with colleagues, someone is with the pressure of the company, understanding how the company is working. There is 2 borderline cases. It is work-based learning simulation, and I will be back on this, and job shadowing. In the perspective of these webinars, I think that it is important to underline that if you want, when you want to build, to create a system, it means that you have to make choice between different types of work-based learning. But it could be also a combination. It could be different types of work-based learning in the same VET system. Currently, and it has been said that I'm working with Armenia, and in Armenia, they have decided to start by improving the internship system, and then to going further till the apprenticeship dual system. So, but at the first step, there will be existing different model. It is the case in France, also in Germany, and in other countries. I think about Moldova too. There is something very important that for choosing the type of work-based learning, it should of course be for the right program type, for the right purpose, and for meeting the stakeholders' need. So it means that there are some policy issues. I wanted to underline these policy issues because in my view, you cannot build the system without having the policy issue behind. There are some objectives that it is mentioned here. We can find a different type of objective. There is the one of the most known. It is the matching of VET with the skill needs by company. It's always that companies. It is always something that it is claimed. They say, okay, we need people that are trained, are qualified with the skill we need. And work-based learning, it is one of the perspective of the issue, but it is not the only one. It is one essential, and maybe later we can talk about this issue. But also, it is very important for the system itself. It is important to in the beginning when you are working on the qualification, or on the occupational standards. Another issue, policy issue, it's also to equip the learner with the right skills. So the company needs a skills, but the learner should be equipped for having a job, a permanent job, or for making a career choice. Let's go now. I like also this scheme. It is work-based learning. It's a win-win-win-win system. Okay, we are talking about skills. We are talking about productivity, motivation, and job. But for employers, there are some benefit. There are also benefits for learners, employees, but not only these three main actors, but also for the VET institution and for the employment services. Let's see just a few information about that. So for the learner, I'm going to just highlight some benefits, some advantages, but there are other. But for the learners, it's definitely to improve its employability. When you have worked in the company, when you have been trained in the company, of course you are more employable because you know the context, and it's easy for you. And that's the second advantage. Easy for you for coming. For the transition from the school to work. Then also that's the work-based learning. It's for the development, its own development, because you are when you are talking about young people, it means that they can have this professional environment. But it is also for adults in continuing training, or it could be for the program you are working in. It's for refugees or people that need to be employable youth. It means also that it is the work-based learning. It gives the context of the companies. Before the webinar, there were videos, and these videos were very interesting because we have seen them. We have seen some young people, but older, or refugees, or never mind, that were in the context of the company, and that it is also, it means that if you are working in a company, you're going to have a better access to job. Then for employers, I would like to just to highlight Higher productivity, of course, yes, it is when you when you're going to have someone coming from new technologies, new sometimes new techniques. Of course, you can improve your productivity. Usually, we think that the company can provide new technology, new, etc. But it's not always as simple as it is. The efficient recruitment, when you've got someone for, it could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, half a year in your company, it means that it facilitates your recruitment because you identify the people more, you know their ability. So, and also it is a social engagement in the community. On the other hand, if you've got a specific training, a longer training, for example, like apprenticeship, formal apprenticeship that we're going to see later, you can have also, it could be a job-specific skilled people. So it means that you can identify correctly. For the society, it is the relevance of skills. And also for the community, it is the economic development. More you provide, more the qualification match with the skills needed, more the economic development is favored. Of course, and for the society, it is also employment for less advantaged group. It is where you can, and we'll see later that it is on a job training, and it is one of your objectives, I guess. Of course, the strong link between vet and business, that it is crucial. And we'll see also this later. Finally, for the institution, they are working with company for developing occupational standard. So the programs they are provided are relevant for the companies. And then the teachers can be trained inside the company or they are working together. So it means that this connection also to update the knowledge of the teacher. Of course, it reduces the cost of training because it is a share. It is a shared cost. I'm going now. I have to go quicker because I think I will be late. About the type of work-based learning. There are many ways of classifying the work-based learning type, and I've chosen to take this. The learner is an employee. We see the learner is a student, and later also what I call the borderline cases. So the first type we identify it is when the learner is an employee. So here we can identify three kind of work-based learning. Informal apprenticeship. It is when it is we can say that it is when training arrangements are not formally regulated by governments or social partners, but they follow local tradition, customs. And in fact, they do not usually include a classroom learning, but it could. And they involve a training agreement between an apprenticeship and a master craft person. It is normally an informal social contract. It's not written. This agreement could be written or oral. Then you've got the formal apprenticeship, and we will go further later because this is one I'm going to develop. It is one of the most known of work-based learning, that apprenticeship. It is within the learner is an employee. There is a formal contract. There is a training activity in vet schools, and we are going back later. Then the third part, when the learner is an employee officially, he has a contract, and on the job, it is training which takes place in a normal environment, a work environment, and it is most common. We can say that on work-based learning through individual working life, and on the job training regarding the program you are implementing currently. It is where I can see that it could be one of the solutions for the you were talking about the refugees and the youth that are not qualified in Jordan, and it is because usually it is shorter program and than the formal apprenticeship. And on the job learning, it could be also when you are working on the continuing training, when people should be requalified. It could be done through this issue. When learner is a student, that's the other issue. The status means that it is still under the authority of the school, of the vet institution. So it could be first a work placement. Work placement are short-term, very short period where the student is integrated, but for very short period in a company. Then you've got the internship training, and I will be back on this issue also. It is the one I want to develop. It is usually it is less, it is shorter than apprenticeship, but what is the main issue? It is that it's still under the authority of the vet institution. There are, of course, cooperation between schools and company, but its status, it is a student. And then the cooperative education, and cooperative education, it's known like co-op, and it's developed in the United States. It's close to internship and traineeship, but it is it's more at the end of a year of a school year, and it is yes, it is at the end of a school year. Instead, that traineeship could be in a sandwich course. Finally, the types that I call also not so fine, which is simulated work-based learning. And here you've got three types. You've got the virtual films, the real film, but that are close to the institution, and the school and company. All this simulation, it is a workshop. It is it could be, for example, for those who are preparing to be a cook. It could be a restaurant, and it is a simulated restaurant. So it means that the young people is doing work, but not in a real activity, in a real environment. So you don't have the pressure of the client, you don't have the pressure of your colleague. Of course, technically, you are trained technically, and you are working as an employee, but there is not this context. That it is why it is, can say that it is borderline. The third one is a work familiarization. And this, it is what we call the job shadowing or work experience. It means that someone is looking at someone working. So he learns by looking, but not by doing. But is in a work environment, but is not doing like that. And the work experience as a career guidance. It is, yes, in some countries, you've got at the end of college, for example, a specific session for be aware of what it happens in companies. And there is, I like this scheme because it provides the type of work-based learning we've seen: apprenticeship, employees, internship that are students, simulated. There are still student, but it's simulated, and program to reintegrate disadvantaged people on the job training, what I call. And finally, the last one, learning about. And then you have a strong contact with the companies. Apprenticeship, you spend more time in companies than in internship. On the job training, it could be more or less. It depends on the scheme. And at the end of the day, if you take a learning about work, finally you have got limited workplace contact. And the link between the real world with the companies and the vet system is also weak. Come back to the learner is an employee, and I wanted to underline the formal apprenticeship. Sometimes it's called, we've got dual education for in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, etc. So the main issue is that is combining learning with school and at the workplace, in the company, and in a training institution. And that one characteristic, one feature, it is that the majority of the time takes place in the company. And there is a contract of employment. That it is, sometimes it could be also, it's called a training contract. His employment, he has a contract, but it's a specific employment contract. There is a wages remuneration that it belongs to the feature. And of course, at the end of the period of the apprenticeship, you are qualified. Your perspective is to get a qualification. And something important about the apprenticeship, it is the duration. It could be 2 or 3 years. It lasts several years. Yes, and in the contract, you know what each party means. Well, the company, the vet institution, the company, and the learner, who is an employee, who is supposed to do. And what does it require? So first, and I think that it is a key issue, and it is the cooperation between employers and government and trade unions. It is where you need to have a regulation around this. So it means that in the perspective of implementing or developing an apprenticeship system, it means that you need to have a negotiation and regulation. That leads to the institutional arrangement, because the cooperation with the stakeholders just mentioned, social partners, government, means that you need a legislation, regulation, wages arrangement. It's all is linked with that, but also the quality assurance. It is how the link is made between the company and the vet institution. The commitment of the companies is important to train. You have a mentor, and the company is committed. It means that I will train the apprenticeship. There are specific learning outcome to acquire, etc. So it's very formal and we know what the company is supposed to do as a trainer. Yes, and of course, the resource, the company, if you want to set an apprenticeship system, the regulations stipulate what the company should have as a human resource, like a mentor, but also the premises. Question to consider, because I'm short on time. There are some questions that should be considered when you think to develop apprenticeship. It is about the wages, it's about the contract, who will sign it, but the legislation you need, and where you are currently, and the social partners governance. Maybe we can talk about the governance later also, and how's going to be how the company is trained, is prepared. Who will do it? It could be the chambers, it could be intermediary organization. Okay, and that question that should be done. When learner is a student, we are talking about the traineeship, and the trainee, the learner is a student. In this case, he's going in a company, but for training period. That it is in complement. In apprenticeship, it is in complement, but the combination is stronger. There is the structure is more. It's very there is a very strong link between the training component in the company. Here, there is of course a training component, but usually it's at the end of a year, or if it is at the end of a semester. So you've got it is more vet institution and internship. In the system of apprenticeship, it is company, vet institution, company. That's the reason it's different. Of course, the majority of the times of the learner is spent in the classroom. Of course, the school is managing and has a responsibility of the program. We've seen that in apprenticeship, the company has also a responsibility. They are committed in this, and the duration is less important. So it's from few days to some weeks, and sometimes. No. I just would like to underline that. It may or not may include a work contract, of course. And I mentioned that the EU, there is the quality framework for traineeship that recommend that to do it with agreement. Some issue about the advantages and challenges. Let's see what it is in grades. Advantages for the school, it's simpler to organize because there is less constraint, and also, when you are organizing the training, if you need to have a strong organization in your school. If it is for apprenticeship, usually it could be 1 week at a company and 1 week at the vet institution. So here it is at the end of a semester, at the end. So it is easier to organize. And the cost for the employees, it could be lower. Things it could be also unpaid. However, and the advantage, one advantage, that the chance of students obtaining a job. It is also that what we talk about the work-based learning, that how someone is involved in a company. Concerning the challenges, yes, the school should have a stronger, significant school resources, because you have to select a workshop, you supervise the student, there is the assessment. It means that there is a follow-up of the training, but also you need to have inside your school someone is in charge of the work placement. Usually it's a trainer, it's a teacher, but never mind. It means that the commitment as a resource for the school is more important. Yes, when it says yes, sometimes the duration of the part spent in company is not enough for a full competence. It means that's one of the challenge. Okay, you spend not enough time for being trained, for acquiring these learning outcomes. And sometimes the quality control could be weak, since, and it is said that sometimes, and I'm coming from the private sector, I can say that it is not the case, and it's rare, but it exists sometimes, that it could be exploited like cheap labor. But I think that it's not always the reality. It's far from the reality, but it is one of risk. And the lack of common approach of the content. We've seen that, for example, in the apprenticeship system, there is a regulation that step also what should be done in a company. If you've got various companies with short-term activities, sometimes what they are doing in one company is different from the other one. The CDFOP has stipulate success factors, and one very important on the left part are related to the company. The structure, the governance is very important, and a strong link between education and employment is case. What we've said that the employer has a strong influence on qualification, and also employer provide training. They are in the application phase, and also that the participation to the support. That's one key issue. It is the connection with the company. I don't know where I am in terms of time, but I would like, in this perspective, you have two tools that has been developed by the ETF. First, there is an interactive tool that could be where it is presented the different form of what it is, the work-based learning, different type. And here I engage you just to visit this the website. You've got the address, because here you can you will find what I developed, the various type. There is definition, there is work, and but also in this module you can you've got some interactive question at the end for referring. And then there is why work-based learning matters. It's more or less what I've seen. Another issue, and I recommend it a lot in this perspective, it is the what we call Already We Are. It is interactive tools with a set of questions that has to be asked when you are going to implement your system. And I've implemented this in Eastern Partnership, and it has been very successful, because around focus group has been set with stakeholders, and there were this set of questions. And this set of questions, it is to know where you are, what you want, what it is feasible, how you can organize. So there are all of these questions. Then it clarifying your way of doing. To finish, I like also just to mention that when you are building this kind of, when you want to create a world-based, your own world-based learning system, the first step would be good to work with all the stakeholders in the country and for developing a concept paper. It has been done, for example, in Georgia, also in Armenia, in Moldova, and that's because you. After asking this question, after making how ready we are, then you can work on this. What is your concept? What is your view according to your objective? And since I'm working currently with Armenia on this perspective, they have set last year their concept paper, and now they are implementing. And something very interesting that also I think that can give some hints to the other countries, they decided to have a step-by-step implementation, not to shift to apprenticeship, but to start by improving the internship system, then to go for companies attached to the VET institution, and the perspective at the end of the day, it is apprenticeship dual system. So that also could be I think that is a good view, and also it means that you can engage more the company, because you start by building the confidence. You know, when you are coming from the company, you always hesitate because you say you don't know. You want to have someone who's qualified for your for the skills you need, and sometimes you hesitate because you think that they are not prepared, etc. So you can also build the trust by improving the system, and then by developing the new system. I don't know at all where I am in terms of time. I hope that it's fine for you, and I think that I have to give back the floor.
5 minutes. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Didier, for your presentation. I'm sure you will receive a lot of questions. It's very important information that we have received from you. The definition of work-based learning will play a big role in drafting the work-based learning model. It seems it's a flexible and proud term or definition. So we will come back to you with questions from our side, and I will invite our dear guests to start writing their questions and to send it through the chat bar. Thank you, Didier. Thank you very much. Now, we will move to the third session, policies, issues, and with Dr. Burhan Shakroun. And I would like to introduce Dr. Burhan to you. Dr. Burhan is an engineer with a PhD in education science from Bourgogne University in France. Dr. Burhan worked during the 1990s as a trainer, chief trainer, and a project manager. He has also worked as a short-term consultant for the EU, World Bank, and other international organizations. In 2001, he joined the ETF as a senior human capital development specialist. Now he is the director of the Policies and Lifelong Learning Systems Division at UNESCO HQ Paris. Dr. Burhan, thank you very much for being with us today. Dr. Burhan, the floor is yours, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Burhan Shakroun, UNESCO Paris, Head of Division.
Thank you, Dr. Qaisi, for the introduction, and it's my pleasure to be with you today and to share a perspective that I hope will enrich the discussion. Maybe I'm conscious about the time, but I think it's important to place the discussion on work-based learning in the context that we are living today and the challenge that we are living, particularly related to the COVID-19. I think this is an important aspect, and in reality, the COVID-19 comes to exacerbate some of the challenges that we were facing in terms of the employment of youth, in terms of coping with the skills of young people, be it refugees, migrants, or local youth. But it also showed the importance of how we consider work-based learning, what part of work-based learning is critical in this context. And I would like, I have a longer presentation, but I feel that it's important that we place the discussion and the policy discussion in this context as well. So I would like to see how I will get to that very, very quickly, because I think this can add to our debate, hopefully later after my presentation. But maybe just to remind that that TVET and the skills development is facing major challenges in the region, and in particularly in Jordan in this case. One is that the labor market is being disrupted with the COVID-19 crisis. The last data I looked at in terms of the economic growth of Jordan, for example, the economy will be contracted by around 4% of GDP. This is a major concern that we'll have to cope with when we are discussing work-based learning, when we are discussing skills development. But broadly, in many contexts and countries, and I think my colleague Didier was referring to that, work-based learning has been seen as a driver for economic development, as a driver for youth employability, and as your colleague presented in the beginning, the importance of youth employability and the contribution that work-based learning is expected to do in this context. But I would like also to highlight the importance of the role of work-based learning in terms of equity and inclusion. We tend to forget that apprenticeship, work-based learning, can serve inclusion and equity, for example, for the most marginalized, for women and girls, which are having and facing major difficulties to enter into the labor market in the region, and in this specific case in Jordan. So this combination of economic role and also social inclusion has to be considered when we are speaking about policies and when we are speaking about policy development, in particular in times of crisis. And that work-based learning can have different benefits, and it's important when discussing policymakers, when discussing the provision, to think about the benefit and the incentives for different stakeholders. For individual, in terms of employability, fast or quicker transition to the labor market, for society in terms of building human capital, but also in terms of inclusion for the most marginalized and most the population that are in need, but also, of course, for employers in terms of productivity, growth, and efficient recruitment process. So the policy making and the analysis has to take into consideration these different benefits and incentives, and act on them in this context. Let me refer to a project that we are implementing as UNESCO in the Mediterranean called Youth Employment in the Mediterranean. It's led by a colleague of mine. She's joining us today, Hélène Guillaume. This project is covering different components. The first one is about enhancing capacities for understanding the labor market. The second is about improving the TVET pathways. And one important aspect of it is work-based learning, together with entrepreneurship and digital skills as enablers for a better transition and smooth transition to the labor market. And the last one is about cooperation. And in this context, we have conducted a review of work-based learning together with ETF in several countries in the region, including Jordan, but also covering Algeria, Egypt, Lebanon, Morocco, Oman, Palestine, and Tunisia. And we have seen that in this context, and we looked at specific aspects that are mentioned in the slide, aspects related to governance, social partnerships, workplaces, funding, quality of the skills provision, the perception of work-based learning, and data and evidence for decision making. So these are the areas that we looked at when we looked at the work-based learning in the region. And our data shows that this is that there are quite important features of the work-based learning in the region that are important to highlight. First, high level of diversity. We have seen a wide range of programs. Some of them are well established, like apprenticeship program, for example, in Morocco, or the alternance program in Lebanon. So, but others who are pilot, who are driven sometimes by donors. That in most cases, the economies are organized around small and micro businesses. And that means that work-based learning has to take into consideration the reality of these type of companies and their capacities to offer quality work-based learning. Didier mentioned earlier the social partners and their contribution. We have seen that while in some countries there is an interesting engagement of social partners, but in most countries we have seen weak engagement of social partners. That means employers' organization and union in the governance, in the decision making related to work-based learning. Because of the diversity and because of in some cases the pilot nature of the work-based learning, also because of the sometimes donors-driven initiatives, we have seen that there is less clear legal and institutional framework, and that this will require to be established in many countries in the region. The funding matters is critical, and we have seen that there are some countries where there is a levy on the payroll that is contributing to funding apprenticeship. That's, for example, the case in more North Africa, meaning Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. Less so in the Middle East, where there isn't this type of schemes, and obviously the lack of clear source of funding for work-based learning makes it fragile and depending on different factors that can hamper its development. The importance of training of master crafts and trainers in the companies has been highlighted in this research, and also the lack of definition of occupation and occupational standards, and the link between the training and the requirement of the qualification and the occupation has been identified. And last but not least, as I mentioned since the beginning, in most of the countries we didn't see evidence of strategies that are aiming at promoting inclusion, for example, for gender or for disabled person or for people from marginalized background, including for refugees and migrants. So these were some of the findings that we have seen from the research that we have conducted in this case. So what needs to be done? Very quickly, first of all, an important aspect is to clarify the legal and the institutional mechanism so that there is a clear indication about what are the objectives of the work-based learning, the diversity of the schemes, and Didier was mentioning the spectrum. So it's important that there is a clear definition of what is work-based learning and what are the different cases that the legal aspect has to cater for. bring in social partners and their engagement, and that means identifying what are the incentives for them to be engaged, how to responsibilize them and make them accountable. And this can be, for example, done through the training funds or the levies, because when the social partners are involved in the financing, they are also concerned and they will be interested in joining for the governance and creating that space for them to be involved in the governance of the work-based learning. The question of the status of TVET in all the societies, including apprenticeship, deserves attention. The capacity of the workplace, and this means, for example, training of the master craftsmen, preparing them and in terms of pedagogical skills, in terms of capacity to organize the workplace in a way that it can be an opportunity for learning and not only for cheap labor. And as I mentioned, the equity and inclusion aspect. And last and not least is about data infrastructure. Unfortunately, we have much less comparable data within the region, but also globally, and together with the ETF, with the OECD, with ILO colleagues and other organizations, we are working toward identifying what type of data indicators can be collected, how these can be comparable, and how it can be used by policymakers to advance the agenda. Let me move to something really I wanted to insist about, because I think we cannot discuss work-based learning out of context. We are in a context of COVID crisis, and it has a major implication on our societies, our economies, on technical and vocational training, on education more broadly. At the peak of the crisis and at the peak of the confinement, according to UNESCO, we had 1.6 billion learners who were out of school and who were obliged to learn from distance. And in many cases, TVET has been impacted higher than other part of the education system because of the nature and because of the practice-oriented aspect. Apprenticeship has been even more affected because it depends on the workplace. So it's important when we are discussing work-based learning today that we discuss the situation in the economies, and that we are facing one of the acute contraction of the economies today. Globally, we are expecting around 7 to 8% of contraction globally, and as I mentioned earlier, for example, in countries like Jordan, around 4%. So it's important to understand that this will have a big impact on companies and on apprenticeship necessarily. We have conducted with ETF, ILO, OECD, the World Bank, other partners, a survey of around 900 companies from 110 countries. And we got a high level of responses from middle and small companies and from large companies. We have done this from end of April to June. And what we have seen is that in most of these cases, there were a complete or partial suspension of operations, meaning companies closed it down or have reduced dramatically their economic activities. And there is a higher impact in terms of the suspension of operation, particularly on middle and small companies. And when I refer back to my presentation saying that in the region, in Middle East, North Africa, in Jordan specifically, the economy is about medium and small companies. This means that those companies are most affected by the COVID, and that they have been obliged to suspend their operation. And the capacity to work from home is less than for big companies. What is worrying is that 36% of the surveyed enterprises stopped payment of wages and stipend to apprentices and interns because of the economic crisis, because of their own capacities to meet their basic needs. So this is important, and this means that there are implications on apprenticeship going forward. When we asked those companies what they will be doing as a response, they said that they will make adjustment to the training. They will try to invest in distance learning. They will introduce and intensify what we call blended training, so hybrid methods of training. And they will capacitate their staff in terms of distance learning and access to online training. So these are some of the points that they have highlighted, but maybe I would like to come and to summarize on what I see the policy challenges for apprentices. First of all, I think that our role today is to protect apprentices and work-based learning in the context of the crisis. And that means in terms of policy action is to speak to the employers and highlight the benefits that they can get from organizing work-based learning. Companies are now under big pressure. It's important that they see the benefit from work-based learning. And some of it is already mentioned in my presentation, in Didier presentation. The second, that in most countries there is a recovery plans and economic recovery plans. It's important that skills is highlighted in those plans, and that apprenticeship or work-based learning is included in the plans for economic recovery. There are, in most countries in the world, there is the fiscal stimulus packages that are coming, and it's important that the skills development and work-based learning is highlighting that. Third, it's important that any policy should support also inclusion and equity. We know that in the COVID crisis, the hard hit are the poorest. So it's important that work-based learning caters for the poorest and the most marginalized. And the equity and inclusion, including for refugees, as Emna was mentioning in the beginning of her presentation. Another aspect is about career guidance and counseling. It's important to navigate a very disrupted labor market. And that means that career guidance and counseling has to be used as a lever to support individuals and support the companies in finding the right skills and finding those learning opportunities that can offer both young people, but also companies a better skills acquisition and potentially better skills needs. Maybe the last point, which I think is important, is about funding. And as I mentioned in our analysis, we have seen that in Middle East and North Africa, we have two clusters of countries. Countries who have a levy on the payroll that is helping them to ensure a sustainable resource for vocational training and in particular work-based learning, including in this case initial, meaning apprenticeship, another form internship, but also continuing training for the workforce. While and that is the Maghreb countries, while in the Middle East we have less so schemes. There were some attempts in Jordan, there were some attempts in Morocco, in Egypt, but these are not very well established mechanisms. So one important aspect is to see how we will ensure there is a sustainable resource for promoting work-based learning. And that can bring better involvement of the social partners, that can bring also more incentives for the companies to see how they can benefit from the work-based learning. So let me stop there. I think that what I wanted to convey is that work-based learning has a potential, but it had problem before the crisis. But we have to be aware that the crisis is exacerbating some of those challenges, and that the policy making will have to take into consideration the context, which is a contracted economies, impact on labor market, impact on the small and medium enterprises, and that means impact directly on work-based learning. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaisi, for the invitation to all colleagues, and of course, I'm happy to engage during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Burhan. We're also happy to have you today with us. Thank you for your presentation. Now, dear guests, on behalf of the project, once again, I would like to present our thanks to our presenters or speakers, Mr. Didier and Dr. Burhan. And now, as planned, we have the Q&A session. So I will start with presentation one with Ms. Iman. Engineer Hussein Al-Atoun asking you, has the outcomes of Qudra 1 program been utilized in Qudra 2 program?
Yes, thank you, Zaid, for transmitting the question. Yes, to a large extent, we are, the same team that was on Qudra 1 is still in Qudra 2, so there's continuous discussions with GIZ and those that were involved under Qudra 1 program. I can maybe bring up like an example of the discussion we had during last week on the number of hours of trainings provided, for example, to be increased, or on participation, etc. So yes, we are trying, and we're still working on that. So the program has been designed to a large extent. However, we're still in the preparatory phase, so there is still the luxury of changing and modifying, etc. So we are reflecting on the results of Qudra 1 and trying to the extent possible to reach better and better results all the time. Thank you, Engineer Hussein, for the question.
Thank you, Iman. The second question is for Mr. Didier. Mr. Didier, Ms. Wasan Hijazi sent you a question. She would like to know, hence VIT and the project are qualifying the beneficiaries. What would be the role and tasks given to local private sector training and consultants firms?
First of all, before answering the question, of course, it is interactive, and I would like to react on what Boren have said. Okay. I definitely agree on the fact that the COVID have changed the paradigm. And currently, what is the objective of the company? What are the questions? The question it is, am I going to survive? That's a question. So the skills need and the commitment of the companies in the system, in the VET system, it means that it should be skills that are crucial for the survival of the companies, because it is their mindset currently. So we have to take that into account, and I agree. And the other issue, it is also about the size of the company. When we present the system, we should always have in mind that 95% in general of the companies are SMEs and micro. So when we are talking about the commitment, when we are talking about the resource, when we are talking about all of these things, we have also to take into account that these companies should be helped. And it could be also the question, I can answer to the question that has been asked by Mrs. Wasson Isari. There are intermediary organizations that can help the companies. You know, when you've got small companies, it means that what is your objective? Your objective, as all the company, but it's more sensitive for a small company, it's to provide a service, it's to product goods. And sometimes you have a little bit time for qualifying people, for integrating this issue, but you don't always have this time. So you need to have a support, and the support could be done by intermediary organization, of course, like chambers, like a chambers, like an employer federation, like local private sector support. Of course, when we are talking about intermediary organization, what are their goals? The first goal is to provide, it's to advocate the companies. It's to help them to find a market. It is to provide them news about their market. And at the end of the day, sometimes they are also helping them to qualify, to give skills to the company. So that's also inside the project. I think that it should be also support. And when you are the question about qualifying the beneficiaries, what will be the task to the local sector training? Well, I think that it could be there is consultancy also. So it's interesting because I will add intermediary organization also. They can provide, they can help the companies to set a training program, to have a strategy, to identify what, and to help them to be aware about how they can manage, how they can be supported by the training for having skilled people. And in the context of COVID, because it's quite interesting, it is also what they change their business model. They will change. Of course, not for a hairdresser, I'm talking about something I know, or a car repairer or something like that. But at the end of the day, of course, the company will change their mindset. Sometimes it will be more greening, sometimes it will be, more close to the company. So I think that the local private sector training, consultancy, intermediary organization, they can help companies to prepare their training program, to train the mentors. They can train the mentors. They can help them also to involve them in the educational educational program, etc. That's the view. Sorry for being longer, but I'm talkative. It's a risk.
Thank you, Didier, for answering the question. Now, I have a question actually for Dr. Burhan. Dr. Burhan, as we all know that the size of the labor market enterprises plays a major role in choosing the proper partnership between the training and employment stakeholders. In the Jordanian case, for instance, 90% of the Jordanian enterprises are small and medium-sized enterprises. 60% of the Jordanian workforce is working to the small and medium enterprises, and it makes 50% of the GDP. In such cases, Dr. Burhan, what is my question, what would be the applicable arrangements towards institutional partnership between the training and employment stakeholders?
Shukran, Dr. Qaisi. This can take a full webinar for the discussion. But I appreciate, I think the point that you are making is critical, which is applicable to Jordan, but also, as I mentioned earlier, in other countries. And I appreciate also the fact that you are putting a bit the emphasis on the real challenge that we are facing in the region and specifically in Jordan. But let me say that in many countries, this is also the case. In most economies, as Didier was referring to, the small and medium enterprises are the core of any economic sector. So there are three elements of response to this and three policies that we can see. And I would like to refer to different experiences as we are mentioning them. The first element is, again, Didier referred to that, is how effective are the intermediary bodies? And that would mean Chamber of Commerces and Industry, and I know, and I have met with the colleagues in the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Jordan, and they are quite a dynamic team. So that role is critical, and that will refer, for example, to a model like the German model. It is there where the Chamber of Commerce and Industry has been playing an important role in leading the apprenticeship and work-based learning model. The second solution, or the second model, which is interesting, is models like the Korean models, where the role of big companies is to play that role of traction of the small companies. Because we tend to think that it's the state who has to play a role. It's not always the case. It can be company to company. It's the value chain of specific industry. So is that how big companies, and again, in Jordan, there are some big companies that can play that role of, or say, leveraging, coaching, developing the small and medium enterprises and playing that role. The third model is the capacities of the small and medium enterprise themselves to come together and to play a role of responses. And again, that would mean a sectoral response to the challenge. And this would be, for example, the case in South Africa, where you have, we call them sectoral councils. You have different examples. You can have even in the case of Jordan, the water sector has been one of the active, tourism as well. So there could be a way of pooling resources, pooling expertise, and playing that role of supporting the members of the sector. So I think these are at least three models that have to be considered. Now, let me bring again the discussion to the situation of the COVID. I think it's important to understand how the Jordanian economy, because the case is about Jordan, but it's applicable to all the other countries. Jordan is adopting a fiscal stimulus program as any other countries in the world. In the stimulus programs, it's saving companies. Did you mention that? It's the survival. In some cases, it's saving, and that will be social security programs, that will be intervention to really protect basically the companies. But in most of the stimulus packages, there is also a growth and a development component, including a new path for development. What is important, and it's, I think, our role as TVET stakeholders, if I can say so, or a community of skills development, is to have a loud voice to mention and to highlight the importance of investing in skills in any economic growth program. And that the budget of TVET, the budget of apprenticeship, that is already very thin, has to be protected, if not increased. And it's webinar like this one, is other webinars to say, hey, there is an issue. If we reduce the budget and allocation to TVET and to apprenticeship, the economic growth program can be jeopardized, because there cannot be a growth without skills. So I think it's important, the policy message from our webinar is that it's important to invest in skills, in the growth and in these recovery plans. And it's important that apprenticeship, in this case, or work-based learning, is also protected. Back to you, sorry for being long.
Thank you, Burhan, Dr. Burhan, for the answer and for the details. Now I will switch to Mr. Didier. We have a question for you, sir, from Isam Abu Saud. He said, there is a big issue here. Is the need to be created before training skilled worker? How are you planning to create needs? As we know, the market is full. Mr. Didier.
Yes. I think that if I understood well the question, that the identification of needs. And yes. Yes, in identification of needs, well, there are various models. You can have some observatory. I'm very, okay. I advocate a lot what we call observatory skills and employment. It is because, and that could be help the very small company. You know, for anticipating about on skills, you need to anticipate. Of course, with COVID, it wasn't possible to anticipate such a crisis, but whatever. If you have the ability to set up an observatory that can conduct survey, that can take account what it happens in around your country, what it happens in a sector. So it means that you can identify the needs, and such kind of tool, the observatory employment and training and employment, that gives also some keys, because you are able then to identify which skills will be needed according to your sector. There are many examples about these tools, but it is you need a support, because it is hard to set. And when I said support, it is also financial support for that. But it is one issue, and it is where you can well support the small companies, because the big company, they can anticipate. They have resources. They are doing that. They are anticipating, and it is one of their job of the company. It is they conduct activities on what they can do, what they have to do, what will be the skill. For the small company, they are not always aware. They are in reaction, and that's also where for the training. You know, usually. The companies, the small companies, very small companies. I used to work in motor trade and repair, so it was 90% of the company were less than 10 employees. So imagine, and they don't have time for anticipating. And the vet, it's just when it is very needed. Okay, and they send people. That's right. So it means that it is all the system, and it could be linked with what Boren said before, about how a big company can help small company. It is the alliance, because a big company, they are conducting, they are anticipating, and they need sometimes they need to provide this information, not to the competency, of course, but to their network when they are subcontractors. That could be the issue. If it's about the identification of needs, I think that's an issue. Currently, there is the big issue of the COVID, but well, we can't say, okay, there is a COVID, I can't do anything. But out of this specific crisis, I think that the employment and training and employment observatory are very good tools for this issue. And okay, that's all. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Burhan, please. Sure.
Of course, the labor market is full, and the economies, particularly the public service, will not accommodate additional workforce that is coming because of the youth bulge. So the labor market is full, but the creativity and the potential of the economy is not full.
Yes.
And that will mean that we cannot consider the work-based learning only the traditional company that is having a young person and offering apprenticeship. That model will serve some of the part of the economy, but the economy is also about the creativity and the entrepreneurship of the young people. And there, the potential is still large. And that's why it's important that when we think about work-based learning, we also think about entrepreneurship. To give you an example, it's really very basic example, but it shows a bit what we can do. Together with my colleague Hélène here, we have invested in a program in Benin on how to offer apprenticeship for young people who are not attached to any company, because they are already in the street.
Okay.
And you can offer them skills development, you can offer them entrepreneurship, you can offer them other form of skills. They're self-apprentices in reality. And given the type of economy that we have in the region, it's important to keep in mind that we need a much more combined type of models, and not the German model to Jordan. There should be something that is also related to Jordan case. Jordan context, Jordan economy, but Jordan youth who have creativity, who can have new initiatives. So it's important, yes, the labor market is full, but the creativity and the potential of the economy is not full.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment, Dr. Burhan. The next question, please. طيب. The next question from Khalid Abu Laban to Didier. Can we include volunteering work with work-based learning methodology? What are the effective steps for that?
Can you repeat? Can we include?
Can we include, the question was, you can see it now, can we include volunteering work within work-based learning methodology? What are the effective steps for that?
Yes, we can. I think that the issue, it is, first of all, the effective step. In fact, you have to build a system and you have to anticipate the involvement, including of the volunteer work. So it could be done. I don't understand what it's meant by effective step exactly, because effective, it means that if it's built, if it's created, it should be integrated from the very beginning. But if you could be precise, what the question is, what effective step for that?
Okay, maybe Mr. Khalid, if you can explain your question more. Yeah.
Because of course you can. It is, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Didier. Now we have a question from Engineer Muhammad Irshad to Dr. Burhan. Now in ILO Amman office, working on main project RPL. Could you let us know or let us how can make link with work-based learning? The question here now, yes?
Yeah, thank you very much, and my warm greetings to Engineer Irshad. It's a pleasure to meet virtually. Iman was saying that it would have been great to meet in face-to-face, but still, I think it's really very nice to meet with Dr. Irshad. Maybe I would like to respond to the question of Engineer Irshad, also referring to the previous question on the volunteering, because there is a common aspect here. And Didier was saying, of course, volunteering work can be included in the effectively and can be included in work-based learning. One aspect, of course, is how much the society, the labor market, the companies value the volunteering work. But I will not enter into that because it takes a bit more elaboration. But let me say that in some European countries, for example, including in France, volunteering work can lead to a form of certification because the RPL system functions and take into account different experiences and not only a specific type of experience. So RPL and work-based learning is an important mechanism to recognize and value work experience broadly, which can include a very specific occupation, but it can include other form of engagement in the workplace, including the volunteering one. Now, how we can make link with the work-based learning? First of all, the work-based learning does it lead to a form of recognition and certification? It's important. If you ensure that a form of work-based learning will lead to any form of certification and not necessarily a full qualification. It can be, now we are speaking about micro-credentials, about other form of certification. So how we can value that work experience and how work-based learning is able to recognize and value, document the experience itself. This is one aspect that is important to understand and to value. And I think the project and the reference that Dr. Irshid is referring to could be considered. The second is, what is the pathway of learning in such work-based learning? It has to combine, for example, workplace and off-the-job learning. What is the off-the-job learning in this case? How much foundation skills are included in it? And how much workplace is including in it? What are the tools that are used to document and to value this experience? And how employers and the social partners are involved in it? We cannot consider a work experience that is documented of value if the employers do not trust it. And it comes to the point about quality assurance and trust. How much we trust the work experience, but also the learning outcomes of it, the assessment of the learning outcomes, the documentation of the learning outcomes. So there should be other aspects that have to be included in it. One is what form of certification is in place, what form of learning pathways are organized, and who is involved in the quality assurance of it. If employers are engaged and involved, then there would be a trust and it can be valued in the labor market. And the last one, it's important that the training providers are involved, because if the learning is limited in its scope, but it is valued, it should offer further learning. And the training providers have to be able to recognize that learning and to embed it in other learning paths. And that means flexibility of the training, modular training, competency-based training, all the aspects that we usually speak about. So we cannot detach the discussion from how the system is organized. If it is not organized on competence-based, if it's not flexible, if the employers are not engaged, if the training providers are not working with the employers, RPL cannot function, and less so in combination with work-based learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Burhan. And this discussion will lead me for another discussion from my side now. And the question is for Didier and for you also, Dr. Burhan. Mr. Didier, you mentioned in slide number 1 that the work-based learning may or may not be combined with school-based. Also, in slide number 7, you clarified that the informal apprenticeships is considered as one of the work-based learning types. Accordingly, my question is, how is the informal work-based learning can be assessed and recognized by the qualifications awarding bodies?
Okay. Yes, it's a good question. And also, I can complement just a little bit of what Boren have said. I agree with him, but also it depends on the type of work-based learning related to RPL, because it depends. If it's just only on the job training, like informal apprenticeship, yes, it could be easily connected with RPL. It could be recognized at this. And for answering your question, you've said about the informal apprenticeship. I've said that informal apprenticeship, it is when there is an oral or written agreement that is based on the local and there is no regulation. We can imagine that within the framework of RPL, that at the end of a period that has been made in a company, that someone can acquire a qualification by using the RPL system. It is one way, because the formal apprenticeship, the objective is to get a qualification. Informal, it's not like that, but through the RPL system, and it could be done like that. So you can imagine that to be on company, to acquire learning outcomes, skill, and then for the qualification, it could be done through RPL, for example.
Thank you, Burhan. And this discussion will lead me for another discussion from my side now. And the question is for Didier and for you also, Dr. Burhan. Mr. Didier, you mentioned in slide number 1 that the work-based learning may or may not be combined with school-based. Also, in slide number 7, you clarified that the informal apprenticeships is considered as one of the work-based learning types. Accordingly, my question is, how is the informal work-based learning can be assessed and recognized by the qualifications awarding bodies?
Okay. Yes, that's a good question. And also, I can complement just a little bit of what Boren have said. I agree with him, but also it depends on the type of work-based learning related to RPL, because it depends. If it's just only on the job training, like informal apprenticeship, yes, it could be easily connected with RPL. It could be recognized at the issue. And for answering your question, you've said about the informal apprenticeship. I've said that informal apprenticeship, it is when there is an oral or written agreement that is based on the local and there is no regulation. We can imagine that within the framework of RPL, that at the end of a period that has been made in a company, that someone can acquire a qualification by using the RPL system. It is one way, because the formal apprenticeship, the objective is to get a qualification. Informal, it's not like that, but through the RPL system, and it could be done like that. So you can imagine that to be on company, to acquire learning outcomes, skill, and then for the qualification, it could be done through RPL, for example.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Burhan, do you have any contribution?
Maybe I think again the landscape is changing. Well, first, if I take examples of recognizing the informal apprenticeship, again, cases in Africa, but also in Southeast Asia are interesting, where the government, the employers have created specific certifications for informal apprenticeship and included them in the national qualification framework, sometimes as an entry level, sometimes as a specific type of qualification. So I think that effort of including informal apprenticeship and informal learning, and particularly learning in informal part of the labor market, is a responsibility both for policymakers but also for the social partners, I believe. Otherwise, we are putting aside a large number of people, and that's not what an inclusive system should be. So I think it's important. Second, the landscape is changing, as I mentioned earlier, with what we are calling micro-credential and digital credential, nano-credential. And when you see, for example, let me refer, of course, it's far from Jordan, but still the global community on qualification framework is connected. If you look at the most recent revisions of the qualification framework, New Zealand, Australia, and France, you can see that there is an attention to what is called micro-credentials, or part of qualifications. That's the case in New Zealand, that's the case in Australia, and France is called part of a set of competences. And if you take also US with this process, what they call stacking qualification, and that means how you can earn a different set of small type of learning outcomes, and then you can stack them, meaning you put them under one qualification. So I think that effort of, let me call it engineering of the certification. Second, effort of inclusive approach. And third, the aspect of quality assurance of any form of certification are critical action that have to be taken in this context if we want to include the informal apprenticeship, informal learning, and particularly learning happening in informal economy. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Burhan. Actually, we have 12 minutes, and we have also about 3 or 4 questions. So I have a question from Sami Al-Alul. to Iman and to Dr. Burhan. والقدرة implementation and work-based learning projects that take place or provide lessons and feed into development for further government programs, policy, and frameworks.
Yes, before answering that, I think Didier wanted to comment on the previous question. Didier?
Didier?
Yes, sorry, it's interactive, but it's
Sorry,
always interesting.
Sorry.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, yes,
we do.
We do.
I know Boren talk about this recognition, that specific recognition of informal apprenticeship. I think that's an issue, but also we have to. Sorry, because I'm coming from the private sector, I have this issue. So, what it is a value from the employers of this qualification. I think it's good, but it means that they should be very involved when you are integrating them in a qualification framework. That should be not only because it should be recognized. I agree with you that for not putting apart these people, but also it should be there is one main condition. It is the involvement, because you know the employers, we have a qualification framework, but we all have in mind qualification. We know that this qualification is for this job, more or less like that. We know that it is not only theoretical. So when you have specific recognition of specific learning outcomes, it should be with the support, and also it means that you have to. It could be sectoral. I think that it could be a good idea when it is sectoral, but you have to take into account that how it is accepted, how it is, what is the view from the actors that you are providing with. It's a small story.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Didier, for the comments. The question for Ms. Iman and Dr. Burhan, please, Iman, you can start.
Just wanted to say, from the project management perspective, I mean, this is definitely the intention, and this is being done through making sure that it's a participatory approach from the beginning. So these sessions are being, conducted in collaboration. I mean, we are inviting all stakeholders, whether governmental, non-governmental. We're trying to do that from the beginning, so that whatever is being done, different parties can contribute to from the beginning. And of course, when things are being done, there will be reports and lessons learned on the proceedings, on the results, etc., and they are being shared. So our intention and what we want to do is definitely, we definitely want to provide recommendations for further development. So that's the case from the project. Yeah.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you, Iman. Dr. Burhan, do you have any contribution to this question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to say, first of all, how much I appreciate also to know about the Qudra project, and I'm sure, and I'm happy to that my colleague Hélène is also joining today with us. So I think there is a lot of collaboration that we can have between Qudra and youth employment in the Mediterranean, at least in this area of work-based learning. We are doing three things going forward. I mean, in the next few months, we still have 1 year in the project that we are implementing. One, we have conducted this work with ETF on work-based learning situation in the region, and we have developed a manual on supporting work-based learning in the countries. We would like to use that manual to support countries depending on their needs. We have identified different challenges in different countries. So that's one thing. The second, we would like to further develop resources and common language across the countries. We have across the region different terminology, different definition, and different resources, and we would like to make them available and to have a kind of a work-based learning community in the region, and we have created for that a platform that is hosted by UNESCO Univoc. And the third is about policy learning. I mentioned earlier, there are some assets in the Maghreb countries that are not in the Middle East countries, while there are some interesting initiatives in Middle East countries that are not in the Maghreb countries. We would like to ensure this policy learning, and rather than looking for the experience of Australia, maybe Jordan can learn from Morocco, and Morocco can learn from Jordan, because there are some similarities, some interesting initiatives that can be shared. And I mentioned one of them, at least for me, is critical. Funding work-based learning is a critical one. Social partnership involvement is a critical one. And the quality of work-based learning are critical. If we are able to engage around those areas and learn from each other and see how it can work, what are the solutions, I think that's something that can advance work-based learning. That's what we'll be trying to do through the project that my colleague Hélène is leading. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Burhan. Now, the question now to Iman, actually, from Suhair Al-Qaid. Ms. Suhair Al-Qaid, is partnership with TVET or any governmental body mandatory in this project?
I think the question is not whether it's mandatory or not. I think it's definitely a plus. It's definitely ensuring that these are well-established organizations that have been providing training services in VET for a long time. So I think it definitely adds value. So this is my response for sure. Yeah. And before we move on to other questions, Zaid, I just want to say that this is like the conversation that's ongoing is very inspiring. I have to say that what Dr. Burhan is saying, what Didier is adding, I think these are very inspiring thoughts. I mean, I've been taking so many notes because I believe that this is a great start, and your availability to be with us today. I mean, this is not just a thank you, but this is just adding to the conversation, because I feel that, these points coming together are very inspiring for us, and I'm sure for our partners who are attending this webinar.
Thank you, Iman. Thank you. We have a question for Mr. Didier. It's from my point of view, it's a technical question. Mr. Didier, Reem Khushman asking you, how do we identify the proper period for work-based learning in the different models?
Well, it depends on a lot of things. In fact, it's difficult to answer just in 10 minutes, but it depends on the occupation. It depends on the context. It depends on the acceptance. It depends, first of all, if you've got the model, if it is internship or if it is apprenticeship or formal. Internship, usually it's shorter period at the end of a cycle. Apprenticeship, there is a sandwich courses, so you've got a period in company, period in vet center. So this will differ from one company, from one context to another. For example, if you are working for agriculture, in agriculture you've got seasons, you've got period. So the model is adapted to this. There is also the model, if you are in a production company, you've got also some period of production. So you have to be adapted to this. Also the period, it depends also on the what is the objective. If it is an internship, it is complementing theoretical learning outcomes. So you acquire the theory and then you put in practice. So that depends of your strategy. Concerning the apprenticeship, there is also this connection with the production. You've got the first of all the period should fit with the company's activity, but also with the knowledge that has been acquired before by the learners. So the proper periods depends on from my point of view, from the company activities, from the type of the work-based learning model you have chosen, and also on the duration on the part in the company, because even in internship you can have internship of, yes, the duration is between 1 week to 1 month or 2 months. So the model and the proper period should be, and also, yes, you should always take into account what the connection with the company. It can't interfere with the real production. If the learner is coming in a company and is catch as an interference in the activity, it won't be good. So it should be prepared, but prepared with a negotiation. Do you remember at the beginning I was talking about the fact that with work-based learning you should have a strong link between the education world and the employment and the company world. It is where that should be negotiated, you know? Okay.
Thank you, Didier. Thank you, Didier. I know it's 12 now, but we have the last question for Dr. Burhan from Engineer Hisham Rawashda. According to your experience with applying work-based learning in different countries, to what extent availability of legal framework is essential for applying work-based learning?
Thank you very much, and also again my warm greetings to Dr. Hisham. It has been a long time, but I'm again pleased to see that all the colleagues are still very active and dynamic. First of all, I think we need to place apprenticeship and work-based learning in the broader education training system. So the legal framework of work-based learning depend also on the legal framework of TVET. If in the country there isn't a specific legal framework for technical and vocational education training, there are challenges in having a specific legal framework for work-based learning. And the tension that we see is that in some countries this will fall under the labor legal framework and not under the education legal framework. It depends on the model that Didier was referring to. So it's important to take into consideration this aspect. The second is that it's also about the way the systems are organized and the tradition. In some countries, you start by legal framework before you come to implementation. In others, you develop and you pilot and you organize, and then you may structure that in a legal framework. So there are different dynamics that are important. The third is, what's the value of the legal framework? Is it about defining the responsibilities? Is it about setting the standards? Is it about organizing the process and the system itself? It can be everything. So the legal framework should be also what's the value in the promotion of work-based learning. I think the last question was one of a critical aspect. Work-based learning has to be flexible. And Didier was referring to some examples. I can refer to my own experience. I worked in tourism and in ready-made garment. In tourism, it has to be a block type of alternance or apprenticeship because of the seasonal type of tourism sector. In the ready-made garment, it has to be more frequent alternance because the chain and the production process is much more dynamic. And you cannot tell the company, the intern or the apprentice will come every 3 months. It doesn't work like that. And will come for 1 day. It doesn't work like that. So that flexibility. So the legal framework should be also a driver for that flexibility and responses to the change in the labor market and not rigidifying a bit the system. And the COVID-19 again is an important aspect. If the legal framework do not accompany the challenges, then they become a problem. But I would like to finish by saying that the legal framework is not the only solution for the problems of work-based learning in the region. There are other aspects that are more important, and in particular, the engagement of the employers, the understanding of the needs, and how you will match that with the needs of the young people and of the economy and the society. That's the most critical one before or beside or in addition to the legal framework. I responded to Dr. Hisham, and again, my warm greetings, really sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Burhan, and thank you for the UNESCO and for Dr. Burhan as a person also. Thank you for the ETF. Thank you, Didier. Thank you, Iman, and for our dear guests, the participants. Thank you very much for being with us today. And I would like to invite you to join us. The next webinar will be on 15th September. At the same time from 10 to 11:30, and we will going to discuss the national example through the ILO example with Mr. Thaer Schreider, and the regional example, the Palestinian example with Ms. Haneen Abu Nahla, and the international best practices with Mr. Stephen from the European Training Foundation, ETF. Thank you very much. Thank you as a speakers, attendees, participants. See you next webinar, inshallah. Good luck. Inshallah. Bye. Thank you all.